Hello everyone, myself Sumit Kalho. I am really thankful to my professor who has allowed me to give my presentation through online mode. Today, the theme I have taken for my presentation is one of the poems of Carl Sandburg from his collection Chicago Poems. As we know, Carl Sandburg was born in 1878 and he died in 1967, and he was a Swedish American poet. He also was a biographer, journalist, and also editor. He won three uh, Pulitzer Prizes, two for poetry and one for the biography of Abraham Lincoln. He is known for his collection of poems, Chicago Poems. Chicago is a poem in Karl Burke's collection of poems, Chicago Poems. As the title suggests, the poem is about the city of Chicago. The poet admits to some of the points of the critics, but he defends the city by throwing light on its quality. Let us see into the poems how the uh, poet is trying to depict the theme of social realism through the poems, and that is of the city of Chicago. In Chicago, the poet depicts the city of Chicago. That is what we have already seen. It reveals the poet's love for the city. The poet has too much love for the city, and he defends the critic through the poem, as the critics are saying so many bad aspect of the city or wrongdoings of the cities. But poet supports, and he is saying positively and never taking it never in the negative sense. He refutes the charges of the critics on the city. According to the poet, Chicago is a prosperous city despite its dark side. It has got other aspect also. The dark side also is there in the city, but poet supports the city, and he is always telling others to see the right aspect or the positive aspect of the city, not the negative aspect. The poet addresses the city of Chicago with the names which is describes about various jobs and the industry it is popular for. The Chicago, as we know, is the city of industrialization, where the industrial industries have been developing, and one of the industrialized city we can call it. There we can find the people doing different jobs and different field we can find, like a hot butcher, tool maker, staker of wheat, player with railroads, and nations freight handler. That is what is mentioned in the poem. The poet also personifies the city as a young man who is husky and brawling with big shoulders. Thus, the poet depicts the city as the hard natured man. The city has been working to develop, and to the right way where the city can be developing, and also as it is industrial city, it has been going on through the developing, and industrialization is taking place in the city. Then the poet tells us what people say about the Chicago. There are critics and the people, they are telling some bad things about the Chicago, or they are looking into the dark side of the Chicago, and they are saying that, and that is what the poet refutes them, and that is what the poet says. Whatever they are saying, he accepts first of all, and then he refutes by telling the good qualities of the city that is there in huge number. He agrees to the people who criticized the city for its negative sides. These people call the city wicked. And why they are calling it wicked, that is that way painted woman, that is to say the prostitutes are there who attract the innocent boys, and therefore the people are criticizing the city, and they are considering the city as the wicked city. The poet accepts this charge. He doesn't take it in negative sense. Okay, whatever is there in the city, because the poet also knows that it is there, it is true, and he accepts it. The critics also call the city as a crooked. as it is clear and obvious that bird people are allowed to move with guns freely in the city, and they also kill innocent people, the bad people who are moving around in the city with the guns. And this is also the fact, this is also true, and this is what the poet also agrees. Yeah, it is the poet also knows that, and therefore he is agreeing about that. Ki, ha, it is true, and it takes place, and it is the true nature of the city. And these are some of the dark side of the city. The critics go further and call the city brutal. They call the city as the city of brutal, where the people have no food to eat and the children are starving for food. And the poet accepts this charge also, as he knows the fact and the truth of the city, and it is true for about the city of Chicago. And he also accepts this also, the critics, as they are criticizing. Next, the poet responds to the people who criticize the Chicago. Now, as we saw previously, he was just listening to the people, the critics, whatever they were giving the charges to the city, like wicked, crooked, and the brutal. He listened. And how far he can listen to the people? Whatever they are charging for the city. Whereas, yeah, there is a negative aspect of the city, and there are some of the dark side of the city, but even in spite of that, there are some of the good qualities, and there are qualities of the cities. And that is what he is just responding to the charges of the people that is already given by. The poet admits that the city has flaws. Yeah, city has flaws. Cities has mistakes, and all bad things are there in the cities, and dark side of the cities are there, and there are some of the bad things are taking place by the people as they are doing. That is what he accepts that. He accepts that the Chicago is more than this, that the people know. And when the people are criticizing the city as wicked, crooked, and brutal, poet also says that it is not only that the city is, more than this the city is. City has got so many good things also. But these people, the critics, know only the dark side of the city. It is not less than any other city. The Chicago, the city is not less than any other city. Like any other city, big cities, the Chicago is one of them, where there are people are living in a sociable manner and all that. In the Chicago also it is there. Okay. The poet rejects that the city as a baseball player which continuously hits for power. Okay, and here the poet is projecting the city as the baseball player. As we know, the baseball is being heated to generate more force and the power in that. So in the same way, the city also is working hard for that, and it has been hitting for that. It is never giving up. It wants to develop. It wants growth. As he says in the beginning itself, the poet says that the city of Chicago is a prosperous city. Okay, then the poet compares Chicago to a fierce dog also. Here some of the theme of symbolism we can find that is being brought by the poet. And also he's comparing Chicago to a fierce dog whose tongue is laughing for action, and who is always ready to attack. The city is always ready to attack like the first dog, as the first dog is always ready to attack at anything that he sees. And like a cunning savage, he is willing to fight his way through the wilderness. And like the cunning savage, the city is ever ready to accept any challenge. The city is ever ready to move ahead, facing difficulties, whatever is coming, and it's never giving up. And therefore, here the poet also personifies the city as a young, hardworking man. Further, the poet is personifying the city, as I said, to be a man who is brave, bareheaded, bareheaded and is involved in construction. Bareheaded means here we can understand that the person who is without any support is being developing or is constructing, building, rebuilding, roads construction, all other things that is taking in the city. And that is what the city is doing, and it is personified as a bareheaded person. It symbolizes that the city is growing every day, and also it symbolizes that the city is growing every day. Every day there are new things that has been done The words like shoveling, rattling, planning, building, and rebuildings refer to the efforts of Chicago to expand its horizontal or its horizons. The adjective bareheaded suggests that the city is working also alone, all alone without any support of others. And it has the capacity, it has the power to improve, it has the power to become a good city and a prosperous city. And finally, the poet also calls Chicago a man in action. And in this way, the personification we can find. And it is also social realism is depicted in a society, in a city, how the things are being done and how the people work hard for the development of the city and the society. And there are positive and negative aspects of the city, but very often the people see the dark side of the city, not the good things of the city that is there in the city and that is existing good things. Most of the time people are the citizens, or we can call them as the critics, the poet is saying here in this poem. They always look for the dark side, but the good people like the poet, they see the good and the qualities of the cities, and through which the city can develop and improve and also become a prosperous and well-known city. And finally, poet calls Chicago a man in action. In spite of the smoke and dust, the city has learned to laugh. In spite of all that dirty things or all that negative aspect that is being brought out by the critics, it has learned to laugh also. In this sense, the city is like the man who laughs without giving much importance to the burden thrust upon him by destiny. And all that burdens that is there on him, all that burdens or all that work or hard work or all the difficulties is there that comes to a person who wants to grow, who wants to progress in his life, he will be always tackling it, all the difficulties, all the problems. The person is never giving up because he has a specific aim which he wants to achieve. So in the same way, the city also is bearing all that burdens, and it is progressing to achieve its goals, and it is going through all the difficulties and facing all the toughness in the way. And the city also laughs like the laughter like the fighter who has never lost any battle. And also city also has learned to laugh like the fighter who always fights, and he is always winning, and therefore he is victoriously enjoying and all that laughing and all that. So the city also here, as though there are negative aspect of the city by the critics, it is pointed out, it has also positive aspect, and the city is never thinking about that and stopping developing and working hard. Chicago thus is a optimistic young man. And finally, the poet also personifies the city of Chicago as a optimistic young man who is always expecting a positive result. And the city is working for that only, struggling hard, because it knows that one day it will get a positive result and the good result will come upon the city. Whereas the critics are criticizing about the city, finding out few negative aspects, but it is very optimistic young man and which is always expecting for a positive result, and with that expectation it is just progressing and bearing all that burdens, bearing all the difficulties facing, and all it is progressing in its growth. And also the young man like who has learned to be happy in all the situation, and it has learned to be happy in all the situation, maybe good happiness, goodness, happiness, all that situation, either sad or happy, whatever situation may come, the city has learned to laugh and city has learned to progress. In this way, the poet also personifies Chicago as the true working class young man. True working class young man, the city of Chicago is personified, and also in that way it is depicted the real socialism in a society, in a city, how the people work hard, how the persons work hard, and all together collectively how the people are joining their hands to work for the development of a city. That is what the poet is depicting through the poem Chicago. Thank you for listening to my presentation and attending my presentation. Thank you so much.